How can you tell a first edition? Stay tuned and I'll show you how. The first thing to know about first editions is that the word edition is the wrong word to use. We should actually say first impression or first printing. Reason being, there can be multiple printings of a first edition and subsequent editions. For instance, here's the printing history of one of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings books, with its many different printings, first published in 1955, but printed again a month later, and so on until it's released as a second edition in 1966. A new edition meaning that the typefaces are broken up and reset. There then may be material differences such as new illustrations. However, it is generally understood that when we say first edition, we mean the first printing of the first edition. It's very important. Of course, back in the day, publishers were generally very careful about the numbers of copies they printed, material costs being very high. They would want to see how well a book sold before committing to higher volumes. Today, printing is immeasurably cheaper, so mainstream publishers tend to churn out copies by the pallet load. The second thing to know about first editions is that only a tiny fraction of them have any sort of significant value. For a first edition to be valuable, it must have two factors. It must be extremely rare, and it must also be highly desired. For instance, you might have come across a very rare first edition book of poems, published long ago by someone who never became famous. It's a rare item, certainly, but it's not valuable because it's not widely desired. The opposite would be to find a very rare copy of a James Bond first edition. That would be hugely valuable because it's highly desired by many people. So the ideal scenario is to find a first or early edition of a book whose author was not famous at the time of publication, and therefore it's unlikely that there would have been many copies printed, who later then went on to great fame. So, how to tell a first edition? And the answer is that it depends on a number of factors. There are rules, but then there are always exceptions to those rules. Generally, when a book states its printing date and there are no other dates present, then that is a first edition, like this Dennis Wheatley book here. But it is not always ultimate proof of a first. Some books might have a printing error on one page, or sometimes a name might be changed for legal reasons, later corrected and reprinted. The original then being the true first edition, first impression. These instances require study and research to determine. Neither should one use the copyright date to determine edition. The printing date can often be different. And there are some books which are completely undated, necessitating its comparison to other known first editions to determine its originality. Most modern publications use a numbering system which looks like this, or this, or this. The lowest number, or sometimes the only visible number, denoting the print number. So this would be a first printing, this also a first, this is a second printing. So that's a brief overview to the question of first edition identification. There is of course much more to it than can be gone into in this short video. But let us say that there most certainly are ways to determine originality. But like all things to do with books, it is not an exact science and subject to exceptions of rules. Thanks for watching. Questions and comments below, and do hit that subscribe thing.